My guest today is Dr. Fabrizio Mancini. He is America's #1 healthy living media expert. You have probably seen him on all of the media outlets. He is a world-renowned chiropractor, an international best-selling author and speaker. And I first met him for the first time last week. And we were speaking together on a show that focused on biohacking, and both of us are living in the world of chronic disease, and we're trying to make that marriage between biohacking and building health. And we both feel that these are very tightly related with one another, and that our system is so very broken, but that biohacking is not for just the rich and famous. Biohacking is what we should all be doing every single day by prioritizing our health. And it doesn't mean that you need a bunch of gadgets. You just need to prioritize your health and put your health first so that you can have all those other things. We had a fascinating conversation about what biohacking means, but also about why our system is broken, where we should be putting our focus, the problems in our system, how it supports sickness rather than health. But most importantly, we talked about what you can do every day to break the cycle for you and your family. So get comfy, sit down, stay tuned, because here comes Dr. Fab Mancini. So welcome, Dr. Fab. We met last week on the set of Bloom, and we were definitely fast friends. We are cut from the same cloth without question. And I'm just so excited to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much. And by the way, I just want to say congratulations on all the great work that you're doing, especially in bringing awareness to so many people about this such important topic, especially in the world of functional and integrative medicine that so many people still don't understand, but it's actually where we're finding a lot of the solutions.
Yeah, it's true. And, you know, that providers particularly don't understand. And if I remember correctly, the reason that you took the training path that you took is because the conventional medical path wasn't enough for you. You were pretty intuitive and insightful from the start. Tell
Well,
us about your beginnings in as a provider.
that's that when I think back about that moment, I think we all have defining moments in our lives. My path was I went to a very incredible pre-med program, got accepted at medical schools to go. And 6 months before I went and graduated, I get involved in a car wreck, end up in the hospital where I had done a residency to learn how to be a surgeon because that's what I wanted to do. So my program allowed me to do a residency with the surgeons in the Parkland Hospital here in Dallas. And so I knew a lot of the doctors, and I find myself in emergency with a 4-hour waiting time, severe whiplash. I called one of the surgeons that I met, and he said, let me be down there. He's an orthopedic surgeon. And he said, Fab, after he looked at me, I can give you painkillers, I can give you muscle relaxers, but you really should go see my doctor of chiropractic. So that afternoon, he called from the emergency. I got an appointment. And I thought, honestly, Dr. Jenn, that this was a specialty in medicine. I grew up in South America, in Colombia. I never heard the word chiropractic before. But I was extremely impressed in how I felt over the 6-week period. I recovered completely, not only based on my whiplash symptomatology, but also in my overall well-being. I felt better than ever. And that's where my introduction to the natural health sciences, my introduction to chiropractic care, my introduction to preventative health care, which we didn't have any of that at that time. This was 1987 in Dallas, Texas. It just changed my life. So I recall that moment as a very pivotal, defining moment in my life.
You know, there is a stigma surrounding chiropractic. I don't know where it comes from, but When I was pursuing my medical education, I never even considered it because it was thought of as like quackery, really. Like, oh, they're just going to adjust your back around and suddenly you're going to be fine. And I had no idea the depths of the education that is going on there. And just now knowing and comparing it to our conventional medical education, the chiropractors get it in a way that conventional medicine does not. Like conventional medicine really missed the boat.
I think it's important to understand and remember, I'm coming out not only as a doctor of chiropractic, but I was the youngest president of a university in the United States at 33 years old, Parker University, where it was my chiropractic alma mater, and now is a university that has over 26 degrees in healthcare. So all I can tell you is this: when you compare the education of a doctor of chiropractic and a doctor of medicine, it's almost identical in the number of hours. The only difference is the emphasis that we put. As when they put a lot of emphasis on toxicology, pharmacology, and things that they are going to be doing as providers, we put a lot of emphasis on nutrition, radiology, lifestyle, because we know that we're going to be primarily looking for the root cause of the problem rather than the management of the symptoms. So when you look at our curriculum, you can easily see it's not a lack of or less of an education. It's just a different emphasis. And that's really where the approach that we have has actually benefited millions of Americans every year, because it's very different than what they're used to from the traditional healthcare.
Yeah. But as conventional medicine got away from root cause medicine, which happened, in the early 1900s um, with the kind of birth of the pharmaceutical industry, so too has our chronic disease just increased. And the way that we are, quote unquote, dealing with disease and dysfunction is only making it worse.
Well, I'll go back to what you said a little bit earlier because I think it's an important point. I never considered chiropractic as a career choice either, because none of my counselors, none of my professors in university ever mentioned chiropractic as an option. Initially, I wanted to be a pediatrician, and then I worked at Children's Hospital for a year doing a rotation. And I was like, my school was one that was able to get me into those entities because we were so advanced to determine what kind of specialty we wanted to have. I always feel like the best way to determine what you want to be in life, get in it.
Do
Get
it.
in it, see what it
Yeah.
smells like, what it feels like, what
Yeah.
every day looks like. Because on the outside, sometimes think may seem a little different than when you're in there. So I went to pediatric rotation and I didn't like it. I felt like it wasn't the right place for me to help children. So then I got involved into neurosurgery because I love the nervous system and I felt like, okay, this is what I want to do. But in 1988, the American Medical Association was found guilty by the Supreme Court of trying to destroy the chiropractic profession by doing negative PR to all of its members. So they will go to members like you and say it is unethical and in some cases even illegal for you to consider referring to a doctor of chiropractic. So of course, as a young practitioner, you listen to your leaders and you don't know any better, right? Most people never bother to seek out for themselves that information. I didn't have any of that bias because I wasn't raised here, so I wasn't really aware how chiropractic was being perceived. All I had was my first impression, which was my first visit to that doctor of chiropractic. And then when we were found guilty, they were found guilty, they were asked by the court to desist all of those efforts and and they had to pay almost $88 million to the chiropractic profession that we put that money
Which at
towards
that time
research.
was a tremendous
It's a
amount of
lot of
money.
money. And our all went into research. All the profession decided, you know what, let's take that money and instead of funding ourselves for other things, we put all that money to actually bring the evidence behind what we did. And that's why a lot of times people get confused because when they get excited and they meet a doctor of chiropractic, right? And even right now, I promise you, I may be able to help somebody where traditional medicine has not. And then they go back to that doctor, and the doctor say, "Oh, your lab work is clean, or you don't have any more positive markings. I think, what happened? What did you do? Oh, I went to my doctor of chiropractic. No, it can't be chiropractic." Immediately, that's what a lot of times. But the good news is that the young doctors of today, the young medical doctors, are now being trained on what is chiropractic in most medical schools. And they're actually right now very eager to understand a little bit more about this functional space that is really growing in the medical community. And they seem to be more open-minded than the typical practitioner of the past.
I hope so, but we still have the vast majority of the people out there practicing medicine are of that old mindset.
Yeah.
The vast majority. And I think one of the biggest downfalls of our current medical system is they're not open, that they are in fact the opposite and very closed. And I say all the time, you can't teach the blind to see.
Yeah.
And I know in my own personal experience, I mean, the only reason that I was able to take those blinders off that are so firmly put in place by our training, the only reason is because I got sick. And suddenly, all the things that I was saying to everyone all day, every day, have surgery, have chemotherapy, have radiation. When it came to me having surgery, having chemotherapy, and having radiation, I was like, hang on. Why am I doing this? Right? Why is this happening? And these are questions that we're never taught to ask in conventional medicine. We really aren't. We were given answers to feed to our patients, right? Like I was taught to tell people that breast cancer is a multifactorial disease and there's nothing that you could have done to prevent it and there's nothing that you can do to reverse it. And it's a very paternalistic system that very much wants to stay that way. And if you start to ask the questions why, and you empower the patient and tell them that there are things that you can do to prevent disease, there are things that you can do to reverse disease, that really interferes and calls into question that doctor-patient relationship, the me, doctor, I'm right, listen to me, right? And so I don't think that I would have been open. I don't think that I would have considered anything else had I not gotten sick, had it not become about me.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because in my own evolution, I've been 38 years in this industry. And I can tell you that many times I had to go back into the history of how medicine evolved to understand the mindset of our healthcare system. So right now we know that as our pharmaceutical companies were developing, they were the main funders of our medical schools. They're the ones that actually took medicine into a whole different arena. But the only one condition was that the main form of treatment will remain chemical, pharmaceuticals. Now, we know that unfortunately, I wish I could tell you that pharmaceuticals can help every condition out there. It has been very critical, especially in urgent cases, to try to balance a patient that is way out of there, and especially in a hospital. Anybody that's been in a hospital, and even if you've been around emergency, you can see that it can be a life-saving component. But when you look at the statistics, you realize that chemistry has never been effective when it comes to chronic diseases. And in fact, it manages a symptom to give maybe patients that little bit more of a comfort level, but it never actually addresses the root causes of why so many of us are sick. So when I got into this space, and of course now I'm a practicing doctor, I'm a leader in the profession, then later I became a university president. So now I'm the educator that is training thousands of chiropractors out there. I had to really go out there and begin to educate the public. I never forget when Bill Clinton created the White House Commission of Complementary and Alternative Medicine. I was one of the first people they invited to address the body and be able to share with them why is it that we need to ensure that there is chiropractic care and there is homeopathy and acupuncture and all of these natural sciences disciplines. Why is it so important that we maintain that in our healthcare system? So I understood the economics of healthcare. And when you understand the economics of healthcare, you don't get so defensive because you realize that it is what it is. But that does not mean that an individual patient is not entitled to a second or third opinion in a different discipline. My fourth book that became an international bestseller is called The Power of Self-Healing. And in that book, I wrote how to ask for a second opinion. I was teaching patients because I have found that over 80% of the patients, when they get a second opinion, they get it on the same discipline that they got the first opinion. So if I'm coming to you as an oncologist, I'm going to go to a different oncologist typically. But what about going to a different profession? What about going to a different specialty, a different training? That to me is where you find potentially the solutions for your problem. And especially when you're dealing with an entity that is not even acknowledging or addressing what caused this in the first place. Because that's, in fact, my chiropractor and Dr. Jenn, these are the three things he told me my first visit in practice. And to this day, these are the three things that continue to be my tenets for living. Number one, Dr. Fab, in our office, we are going to remind you every single day that your body is a self-healing organism, that everything that you need to heal, it's already inside of you. I never heard a professional tell me that all throughout my career. Number two, in our office, we're going to share with you that your body is made up of different organs and systems. And those organs and systems all work together to try to keep you in a state of balance. We call that homeostasis. Well, of all of those systems, there is a nervous system that controls and regulates all the other systems. So in order for your heart to function better, you have to have proper nerve supply. In order for your gut to function properly, you got to have nerve supply. So in our office, we're going to focus on trying to improve your nerve function through chiropractic adjustments. And then the last one, Dr. Jenn, that he said to me, this was the one that really got to my core. In my office, we're going to not spend the majority of the time managing your symptoms. We're going to spend the majority of our time helping you understand the root causes of your problems. Because I came in there for whiplash, but they uncovered that I had allergies, that I would get sore throats every 3 months, that I would have digestive problems since I was very young, and different issues that I never went in there for. They were able to help me by simply teaching me a different lifestyle that I was currently living, and more importantly, how to look for these root causes in everything that I felt in my body.
Yeah, so that you could be healthy. And I think that this is what's missing. Now, you talked about getting a second opinion, and second opinions are usually encouraged, right? But they're encouraged to go get a second opinion from the same kind of person, like what you talked about.
Same discipline.
So go get a second surgical opinion, go get a second medical oncology opinion. And they're all saying the same thing, right? And if you don't know that something else exists, and until recently, people didn't know. So I still have people who maybe catch something that I said on Instagram or some other, or they happen to listen to one of my podcasts. Most people don't even know that they can participate in their own healing journey. Most people don't know that there are options outside of surgery or chemotherapy or radiation or, pharmaceutical management. And the public has been really conditioned to fall in line. There are so many examples. Like, think about the number of women that get mammograms every year because they're told to, because they are told that they save lives, even though the data speaks otherwise. And how could exposing yourself to radiation every year possibly improve your health? It doesn't, right? And yet they've been so conditioned. Think about the number of people that are on statins, right, to lower their cholesterol. And yes, it does lower their cholesterol. Does it improve their health? No. Does it decrease the incidence of cardiovascular disease? No. Does it lower the incidence of heart attacks? No. Does it increase metabolic dysfunction and increase your chance of diabetes? Yes. Right? And yet, how many millions of people are on statins? We've just been so conditioned to think that this is the way. And we don't even know that we can participate in our own health, that the body is a self-healing organism. And I think that is largely because where's the messaging coming from? The messaging is coming from the pharmaceutical industry. And people don't realize who's writing the narrative.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because as I've gone through this for the last many years, I have understood that in the process of education, you go through, let's say you go to medical school and you have your traditional education of your courses, which are usually 10 to 25 years behind the times, right? If you read the current research, the books that we're learning from are definitely not current. The second thing
by the
that we
time
learn,
they're published, the information is no longer correct.
and they don't change them that often. I mean, they stay with the same physiology book, biochemistry book for years. So that's one thing I learned. And then I learned that as we go through school, we are required to do continuing education courses in order to maintain our licenses, right? Like for chiropractic, we have 22 hours that we have to do every year, including some mandatory hours, every single year to maintain my license. So that's a way to learn some information. Most of those in the traditional space are funded and managed by pharmaceutical companies. So they're coming in, giving a lecture, primarily to share with you some studies that they have done and share with you that information so that way you can make a better decision when you go back into practice, right? And it's typically more geared towards a pharmaceutical that now you're going to consider recommending to your patients. But it gets worse than that. Then you have what is called the sales force of pharmaceutical companies. They're the ones that are bringing you cookies in your office. They're the ones that are really trying to sweeten your assistance. They're the ones that show up with flowers and things whenever it's your birthday. And they're the ones that are coming in and saying, oh, we have a new study. I know you've been ordering a lot of this drug. We have a new study that says that this drug may be even better. We want you to switch. So the information is coming primarily from them in every aspect of the way. And then now we're uncovering that so much of the money that was actually funded by the United States government through HHS was going through pharmaceutical research to try to prove that their drugs are better, which is, in my opinion, not probably the best motive and the best use of our money.
Absolutely unethical.
But also it's worse than that. Now we're uncovering that some of these studies that showed an adverse response, now they go and do a different type of study. So they never publish those. They do a different type of study that only showcases the positive aspects of things. And those are the ones that get published in magazines. But most of the magazines that are being published in the medical community are actually funded by pharmaceutical companies or representatives of those companies within those entities. So because I know that, I don't get offended, I don't get defensive. But what is sad for me, Dr. Jenn, is that, like you said earlier, the majority of the public has no idea of what is really going on when it comes to their health. And that's why my mission in life was to empower people. All these years is to empower people to understand, ask the right questions, ask better questions. Number two, find out new information. And number three, if something is not working for you, Be willing to change the way that you're thinking, because it's not going to help you long term. So it's important for you to stay open-minded to maybe something out there. How many patients have I had over the last 35 years that would said to me, I wish somebody would have mentioned that chiropractic could have prevented my back surgery, which hasn't worked, my knee surgery, or many of these side effects from the injections of the cortisone and all of that that they've had over the years. Nobody ever mentioned chiropractic until somebody did, and it changed their life.
Yeah, but most of the providers, like we can take orthopedic surgery, for instance, they're not particularly interested in you going to see a chiropractor because that can often prevent having surgery.
Right.
And that's how they make their money. I mean, there's just an inherent conflict of interest there. So they either don't know or they know and they don't want you to know.
Yeah.
And it's not that these people are ill-intentioned, because I don't think they are.
Yeah.
I don't think that providers, conventionally trained providers, I don't think there's some evil conspiracy there. I think what happens is that they get trained, they trust their training, right? Because why would it be
Why would you question it?
otherwise,
Why would you
right?
question it?
And so, and they get trained to do a job and they spend a lot of time. I mean, listen, 4 years of medical school, 5 years of residency, a year of fellowship, all the while not earning any money there. Education is extremely expensive. I mean, it's a half
Hundreds
a
of
million
thousands of
dollars
dollars
to
in debt.
train to be a surgeon, right? So I come out of training $500,000 in debt. And what am I going to do? I'm going to put my head down and work and trust that the system that trained me was telling the truth, and that when I took that Hippocratical oath to do no harm and I'm doing what I was trained to do, I'm not going to do harm, right? And I think that that's what happens, and that we do practice medicine with the best of intention, but the system was broken from the start and we don't know. Are you ready for a breast cancer screening revolution? Well, I'm thrilled to introduce to you a breast cancer screening tool that I have only recently learned about, but I have universally adopted. This is the ARIA test. This groundbreaking at-home breast cancer screening test is one that I believe will completely change the game. So imagine a screening test that's as simple as shedding a tear, because that's ARIA. It's a non-invasive, convenient, and perfect for all bodies and all breasts. Dense breast implants, no problem. ARIA makes it clear for everyone, even women as young as 30. ARIA is backed by over a decade of clinical trials, thousands of samples, and it's developed alongside top breast health experts. Here's how it works. You collect a tear sample at home, and then ARIA then analyzes it for protein biomarkers that can signal early breast cancer. And the best part, you get a consultation with a breast health specialist to review your results. Now, ARIA isn't replacing breast imaging. I am using it alongside QT. It's complementing it and giving you a fuller picture of your breast health. Knowledge is power, and ARIA is putting that power back in your hands. It's time to take control of your breast health, and ARIA is another way of doing it. Go to aria.care, AURIA.care, and use my code DrJenn20 in capitals, DRJENN 20 to get 20% off. Back to our show.
Doctors go into the profession with the best intentions in the world.
Yes.
Because it's not an easy profession to be in. It takes a lot of years of studying, a lot of sacrificing, and a lot of money. And you can become something else much quicker, much faster, and make a lot more money.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that are really going into healthcare, in my opinion, are very dedicated, intentional people that they want to serve. But depending on where you go, it determines the path that you will have in your future. For me, thank God that I received the intuition, the innate intelligence message. I said, you are meant to be in a different profession. Now, I got to be honest with you, Dr. Jenn. 9 out of 10 people try to talk me out of it. because they didn't understand
Sure.
what chiropractic was.
I'm sure.
The medical doctors that saw my bright future ahead of me because of all of my accomplishments, they were like, "You're ruining your life. Nobody's going to take you seriously. Nobody's going to do this." But I didn't listen because I had to listen to the inside voice that was telling me, pursue this. And I always knew that if I didn't like it, I can always change my mind. But if I didn't seek it out, I would always wonder, what if I would have done that, right? So I
Mhm.
don't want to make that mistake in life. Number two is the fact that many of these doctors, when they go into this space and they have an experience like you, and all of a sudden they want to bring in new awareness to their patient base, many times they get reported by either other doctors or patients that are saying, well, my doctor didn't recommend this pharmaceutical. They told me to do this thing differently. And now they may be called for disciplinary action. And I've seen that with my own eyes. These are doctors that were just wanting to introduce a different approach, but unfortunately, according to the experts and their leaders, is out of their scope of practice, right? Just like if I'm a doctor of chiropractic, we as a profession have chosen not to prescribe medication. If I would have been like an osteopathic a profession that said, yes, we will prescribe, and all of a sudden our schools are being funded, our research is being funded, and now
Mhm.
we're all included into the healthcare system that most osteopaths don't even call themselves osteopaths. They call themselves medical doctors
Mhm.
because
They
there
do.
is no difference. They have the
And
same rights as a
unfortunately,
medical
their
doctor,
training has now almost
become identical.
completely mirrored.
I mean, almost identical, which
Yeah.
is very different from the way they started. As you know,
Yeah.
osteopathy started very natural, like chiropractic. So we as a profession have chosen not to follow that path. Why? Because we will lose our identity and we feel somebody needs to be promoting the natural approach to healing. There's so much science behind it. Why are we not celebrating it more? Why are we not integrating it more? And that's one of the things that I do feel I'm beginning to see for the first time in 38 years in this administration that is actually in charge of the health of Americans, that are questioning our research, that are questioning our approaches, that are looking into the scientific basis for many of these natural professions and say, which ones do we promote? Which ones do we integrate? Which ones do we let people know in our education component? And I think that that's where hopefully we'll be a healthier society in the next few years than we've been in the last 10 to 20 years.
I hope so. And I think that this is all because of RFK's perspective, right? Because
Yeah.
he has a very different perspective than his predecessors. And his predecessors have largely been fall in
In
line.
the pharma space. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, but he's taking a lot of slack. And
He's taken a lot of
there's a
flack,
lot
but
of objection to him and his approach and what
and
they know, and he's not a medical doctor and he doesn't have training and he doesn't have knowledge, which to say he doesn't have knowledge is like that
well, it's
that's a
interesting
far
that you
reach.
mention it because I have seen the evolution of him, you know, since I've known them for a while. And I said to myself, if you look at the track history or of RFK Jr., he's always been in a position as an attorney to be an advocate to people's rights. So all these entities will come to him showing how their pharma or their food created adverse effects that made them very sick, but nobody would take their cases. Nobody would want to be a part of it. And then him and his firm began to be the crusaders, the advocate, you know, the
Mhm.
ones supporting these people. So imagine all these years that you are promoting health and well-being, that you're promoting clean food, that you're promoting a clean environment, that you're wanting to hold pharmaceutical companies accountable for the side effects that their drugs were giving instead of the immunities that they were given by the government. So now that's his trajectory, right? And now he gets put in that position by initially Donald Trump, and of course, then the confirmation of the Senate. So now all of a sudden you have all these bright people that are saying, you know what, this guy could actually represent the values of this nation in a way that can help us improve the healthcare system of America, which is completely broken, completely broken. But what people forget is that RFK Jr. doesn't make all the decisions. He's actually surrounded himself with some of the best, from a scientific basis to individuals that are great communicators to individuals that have great track records in helping millions of people. So he and the team is the one that is actually bringing the awareness and the science, which he calls, the gold standard science, where he wants to ensure that what is being promoted through the government, like recently, right, we saw that he was talking about food stamps and how 20% of our food stamps are going towards contributing to the obesity problem of our nation, because he's feeding sugars and candies and all of these things that we are now having to deal with as a nation, and the health of our children, right? One out of three preteens now is pre-diabetic. And diabetes, as you know, is a precursor for heart disease, cancer, and many other conditions. So we have to understand that there is no perfect system, but at least we have a healthcare system that is trying to identify how do we get here in the first place and how to think out of the box to be able to move forward the health of Americans. And that's what I've been watching, from the beginning. And I couldn't believe how much they got done in such a short amount of time. But of course, there's always going to be critics that do not understand, or critics, if you follow the critics, look at where the critics is coming from, who is being impacted negatively on the financial exchange of that decision, because that's where you usually find the biggest critics.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I just looked this statistic up because I wanted to make sure that I got it right. But 54.7% of food stamps are being used to purchase ultra processed food. So 54.7% of the SNAP benefits are going towards the purchase of ultra processed foods.
Yeah.
And, lest we forget, we have a childhood obesity rate of around 25% or 30%.
Yes. It's almost 30%, but it's growing every year by leaps and bounds.
50% of children are overweight.
Yes.
Children.
I know.
And there are diseases now in the pediatric population that did not exist when I was training. We didn't see kids with hypertension. Yeah. We didn't see kids with lipid disorders. We didn't see kids with cardiovascular disease. We were starting to see the asthma, eczema, and that is environmental without question. And I think directly followed with the decrease in the quality of our bread, of our dairy, of our meat, right? Like as we got more toxic in those markets, so too did we see the allergic disease. But never did we see these chronic diseases that we are accustomed to seeing in adults, and now we're seeing them in children.
And it's not just the physical ones. I can tell you, when you look at some of the statistics, the mental health conditions of suicide attempts, especially by women, by girls, the depression and anxiety that our children are going through, this is alarming. Every year we get more and more. And I think one of the latest statistics that they release is that over 70% of American children do not qualify to be in the military because of their health status, whether it's physically or emotionally, they cannot qualify. So my biggest challenge is that if we already have a generation of kids, according to the experts, that their lifespan is going to be shorter than ours, right? Based on all the challenges that they have. Now with these new statistics, that lifespan has gone much lower. And imagine the parents that are having to actually bury their kids because of a chronic condition that was not addressed properly, that was not looked into. And that's really, I believe, what we all should do as parents. As parents, our responsibility is to really support our children because they're not old enough to make some of these decisions. So the way I train parents is like, look at yourself. I call it the mirror effect. Whatever you see in the mirror is most likely what your children will look like. So if you want to change the future of your children, you better start changing what's in the mirror. Because as parents, we get to decide what we buy in the grocery store. Because even if our kids are begging and screaming for the sugars and the cereals and all the stuff we know is not healthy today, we can say, you know, honey, I'm sorry, I love you, but we're not going to bring that to our house. And we're definitely not going to put that in your body because it's not what's best for you.
Because I love you, right? Like
And let me show you a replacement that you may
I was
enjoy even
considered
more.
the meanest mom, right? Like my kids are like, you are the meanest mom because I wouldn't have the garbage in my house. And they used to say, there is nothing here to eat. I would have a refrigerator stocked with food. There's nothing here to eat, right? And they believed that. They were very, very angry at me in like when they were little. Now, as 19 and 17-year-olds, it's a totally different story. Like now they're like, thank God. And if we don't have a refrigerator stocked with fruits and vegetables and, you know, healthy meat, they're like, Mom, there's nothing in the house to eat. Right? So they have a completely different perspective, but it was not easy when they were little. It
Well,
was
you know,
not easy.
for mine, it got even worse because they were so healthy that they thought that they were too thin.
Mm.
And I realized that many of the kids today, I recently went to a park in Orlando and I got to see a lot of our children. And I was looking for the skinny kids and I couldn't find them. There are so
No,
few of them.
they're
I
few
remember
and
going
far
to school
between.
and maybe there was one chubby kid, maybe two out of a class of 150 or
Mhm.
whatever. Nowadays, that's almost 60 to 80% of the kids in class. So that means that the thin kids are now having, they're the ones getting bullied. It's not the other kids, it's the ones that are thinner.
Mhm.
So I kept telling my kids, I said, listen, I know right now you're wanting to bulk up, right? Because they're very athletic in nature. They work out every day. They wanted to do the protein powders that were like 50 grams. And I'm like, do not do that to your body. It's not
Mm-mm.
necessary. Your
It's
body
really
will
bad for your
naturally,
kidneys for those people
yeah,
that are listening. It's
your body will
terrible.
naturally bulk up as you get older. And now that they're 25 and 28 and their bodies look amazing, now they realize that I was right because in those days, I mean, I have one that was even contemplating doing some of the performance drugs, you know, that increases your metabolism to actually bulk up faster because he was an athlete. And I said, honey, don't put that in your body. Let me show you the data that shows, you know, even though you may think it's going to enhance your performance, the reality of it is actually going to decrease your quality of life
Mhm.
over a period of time.
Yeah.
So why not? Let's do it naturally. Let's build your body in the best way because you can be competitive and you can win, but do it naturally.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful that I had the training that I had to be able to support my children that way.
And there's a whole other problem in this young generation, and that's infertility.
Yeah.
And we're going to be seeing it because first of all, they may be overweight, but they're so undernourished.
Yeah.
They're so undernourished and nothing is working right. Their hormones aren't working right. The receptors aren't working right.
Their
There's
brains,
so
right? A lot
many,
of the
their brains
cognitive
aren't,
decline,
yeah, yeah. Well,
inflammation of the brain that is all caused by the malnourishment.
yeah.
Because it's so interesting. You know, I rarely ever go to grocery stores, but in the last couple of years, I've been cooking a lot more whenever I can. I just love it. And I go to the grocery store and I would say to myself, there's probably only two sections in the grocery store, less than 5 to 10% of the grocery store that actually has anything with nutrient value. Everything else is full of preservatives, is full of sugars, is full of dyes, is full of bad oils, is full of all these things that we are now discovering that are the root causes of almost every chronic disease that we have. And we've done it to ourselves. We've done it to ourselves. We are actually participating. So instead of going to a regular chain of stores, maybe we can look for the holistic stores, right? The whole foods that are a little bit more natural. Or you can look for now some cities, as you know, there's new brands that have been very natural driven. They're smaller, they're more boutiquish.
Mhm.
I'm seeing nutritional stores
Farm
open up again
stands.
everywhere, which I love because people can go there and get advice on what are the proper nutrients for myself and maybe better qualities of nutrition that you find in the bigger outlets,
Yeah.
which their nutrition efficiency is very low in comparison to the high level nutrition products that we take when we understand what we should be buying for ourselves.
Yeah. But this is also a governmental problem
Yeah.
because we are subsidizing these crops that go heavily towards the processed food industry. So we're subsidizing wheat, we're subsidizing corn, we're subsidizing soy, and not the healthy kind of soy, the GMO soy. And we are paying for this multiple times because we're paying to subsidize it, then we're paying to purchase it, and then we're paying for the chronic diseases that it causes.
Yeah. Well, I saw recently an article that was talking about how our food pyramid came from people that were all working for the food and drug
Yeah.
industries.
Yeah.
And when you look at a food pyramid, actually, you can flip it over, and that's the way it should be. But now I believe all of that is being evaluated to actually create a new food pyramid for the American people that I believe is going to revolutionize the way we feed our children. But it got worse because honestly, there were some schools. So I did a lot of mentoring for high risk kids. So I got very involved in our school district. And for many years, like 10 years. And then I was seeing that many of our schools were partnering with fast food entities to deliver all of their luncheons. Why did they do that? Because the kids were complaining that they don't want to eat this, they don't want to eat that. But now, if they get a fast food chain that can actually do their meals the way that they're used to, now all of a sudden the kids are happy, the parents are saving money, the school is saving money. But look at the obesity, look at the weight gain that cost us over the last 10 to 15 years when this began to happen. We need to have more awareness, and also we need to have more responsibility that what do we allow it. I remember in college, you couldn't find a vending machine, you couldn't find a soda machines that had anything healthy. And what's worse now is that the same companies that were producing those products now got into the water product, right? And the water product is sometimes even more expensive than the soda. But that type of water, especially with all the microplastics and all the things that we're learning
Mm-hmm.
today, is not a water that you should be drinking anyways.
Mm-mm.
We need
No.
to drink filtered water and very well filtered water because our water is over 200 pollutants in our water
Mm-hmm.
from everything you can imagine. So that is one of the biggest causes of our health problems is the water we're drinking. And we need to pay attention, and we need to also make sure that our children are paying attention to the water that they drink.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And a lot of this comes down to what the government is and isn't doing because they are allowing for a lot of this. I mean, they continue to subsidize these crops because there is a partnership of sorts
Yeah.
between the food industry, between what we have in our water and the pharmaceutical industry because they have an expectation that we are going to continue to have more and more people with chronic illness so that they can prescribe more and more drugs.
Well, it's interesting. When I was doing my research over the last 4 months and started looking at the costs of our chronic diseases, right, which is over 90% of the healthcare costs. And then you start looking at the science and the chronic diseases, over 90% are lifestyle diseases that
Mm-hmm.
can be easily prevented or reversed by simply changing lifestyle, which is something that who's promoting out there, right? I don't see a lot of commercials on lifestyle, but I do see a lot of commercials on sugary foods and processed foods and galore, I mean, you name it.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't see a lot of education when it comes to the root cause of a problem. I see a healthcare system that is designed to do certain tests like blood and urine and determine certain markers. And they've developed their own philosophy that when this is high, this is what you take. When this is low, this is what you take. And it's all a matter of feeding a system that is driving the main solution as a pharmaceutical. Because in the world of functional medicine, and I've seen, remember, I got into this world before there was any wellness. In fact, I'm on the Hall of Fame of Wellness Revolutionary, one of the greatest honors they gave me, of the 15 people that contributed more to the wellness movement. And I remember before any of that, there was no discussion of wellness. And then all of a sudden I saw how wellness became complementary medicine and then alternative medicine and now integrative medicine. So I've seen a whole growth there. Now we have things like regenerative medicine, which is revolutionizing many conditions out there and reversing that. And all of this evolution that I've seen, the majority of the public has no awareness of, because for me, whenever I saw functional medicine rising and I saw thousands of medical doctors, if not hundreds of thousands, that are actually becoming certified in functional medicine. They're getting a master's degree in it. They're getting certifications on it. It gave me a little bit of hope because it made me realize that these doctors, it's not that they don't want to learn, it's that they've never been encouraged to learn. But something happened in their life that they said, you know what? I need to learn more how to best serve my patients. So I'm going to go and take a course on functional medicine. I'm going to take a course of integrative medicine. I'm going to look at the science and see what is it that the science is telling us today that is actually working for many of these conditions. And the statistics are alarming. To me, the biggest challenge is that I'm seeing younger and younger ages for dementia. 1 out of 5 American adults have dementia. I've never thought that I would live in a world where people have to worry about losing their mind and their memory, right? I see that we lost one of our aunts to dementia, and it was a very difficult thing to see because from the outside, she was as beautiful as always. But on the inside, she couldn't even remember her name. She couldn't remember to eat. She couldn't remember where she lived. She couldn't remember a lot of things. And it was very difficult to see. I'm seeing things, the cardiovascular challenges that we're seeing in our youth today, right? Where now all of a sudden we're having athletes have heart attacks. When? When have we ever seen that? And I know that there's a lot of discussion as to what could have created so much. I'm seeing in your space of cancer, more numbers like ever. And people, unfortunately, don't realize that there may be other options out there, or maybe ways that I can actually change my lifestyle. I always say, don't look at a diagnosis as don't look at a diagnosis as a life sentence, regardless of the diagnosis. Look at it as a wake-up call. That's all it is.
Yeah. An opportunity.
An opportunity to say, you know what could I do different? Now that we know that less than 10% of all diseases are genetic in nature, that means that your condition is not necessarily going to be because you have a gene in your body. That's when we went from genetics to epigenetics in the 80s. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and the 90s. Epigenetics now show that the lifestyle, the environment around the cell is the one that's dictating how the cell functions. So your lifestyle is what's dictating how well you feel, how much you sleep, how peaceful you are within your inner body, how you're managing your own stress. It is that some people can manage stress really well while other ones are on the verge of just losing it just by having one simple change in their life. They don't have the patience to be able to do that. So I do think that it's important.
But patience can be learned.
Yeah.
So even if you can be genetically predisposed to not tolerate stress well, but you can learn. I mean, Joe Dispenza will be the first person to say you can learn to tolerate stress, but it's not something that you're inherently born with. It's
Right.
something that you gain as a result of working towards that goal.
Well, when I went to school, and because I was so heavy in the neurology aspect of it, they were still teaching us that the brain cannot change, that the spinal cord cannot recover, all of these neurological conditions that we were going to be seeing for the rest of our lives. And then when neuroplasticity came into the scene, and now we're seeing that the brain is one of the most flexible organs that is constantly changing, constantly adapting,
Mhm.
constantly being able to be taught how to respond differently, right? Is creating and releasing old belief patterns and improving new belief systems that actually allow you to live the quality of life that you want, the one that you deserve. And I believe that there's a wake up happening, but unfortunately, not enough. I've estimated personally, being in this space for long and being on the road, traveling, lecturing every week, about 20% of Americans actually are beginning to wake up, but still 80% that are stuck in that
I feel like that
system.
number's high.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I
Coming
do.
from you, that says a lot. So,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
scared that it's not 20%.
not even 10,
Um,
maybe. I don't know. I know the healthcare bills, right, where we spend our money in healthcare are still about 80 to 90% traditional, and only 10% or so get paid or get reimbursed in the non-traditional. We're
mhm.
hoping that that's going to change, and that all of a sudden maybe we have an administration that will begin to reimburse the non-traditional approaches that are scientific based, that have a proven track record of helping millions of people, because we need to shift in some way.
Yeah.
And monetary value is going to be one of the main issues, because one of the things about being in this health space is that it's too expensive, right? And you go into the space of biohacking and people say, oh, I can't afford that type of technology. It cannot be like that. I mean, lifestyle is a choice, right? You get to make a choice every single day. And all I'm praying and hoping for is that you make a choice today that is a bit better than yesterday. That's all I'm asking. One good choice today, better than
Mhm.
yesterday when it comes
Yeah.
to your health.
Yeah.
Maybe that will inspire you to make another choice tomorrow, or maybe you make two choices tomorrow that are better. And little by little, you'll start seeing that the reason that you have chronic disease is because of an accumulation of bad choices, not because there's something wrong with you, not because you have a gene predisposition, not because you live in Topeka, Kansas, not because you are in a rural area or in an inner city. No, it's because of the choices that we're making every single day. It's like a bank account. When you make good choices, you're making a deposit. When you make bad choices, you're making a withdrawal. By the time you make enough bad choices, you got nothing left in your body to help you heal. So
Mhm.
therefore, the body's going to break down.
Yeah.
So there's so many of these type of scenarios that people need to understand that what they're doing may not be working. So let's try something different. Let's be
Yeah.
open and
Yeah.
try it.
Because if you want something to change, you have to change,
You
right?
have
The
to.
the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. Hello, my beautiful listeners. I'm taking a quick break here to share something truly transformative with you today. If you're ready to take control of your breast health journey, then you need to get your hands on a copy of my book, The Smart Woman's Guide to Breast Cancer. I wrote this book to make a massive impact in the world of breast cancer, empowering women everywhere to make informed choices and educated decisions. You have so much more power and control over your health than you might think. And this book, this is a roadmap to harnessing that power. Inside, you'll uncover the truth about conventional treatments. They're often overestimated benefits and underestimated, underexplained, and underdisclosed long term side effects. But more importantly, you'll discover the true drivers of health and how the choices you make at home every day can lead you to the best health, the breast health of your life, even after a breast cancer diagnosis. Whether you're looking to prevent a diagnosis, avoid recurrence, or simply live your healthiest life, this book is for you. Join me on this journey to empowerment and health, Grab your copy of The Smart Woman's Guide to Breast Cancer today, and let's revolutionize the way that we approach breast health together. But I do think that it still comes down to largely what our society values.
Yeah.
And right now, the system is set up to reward sickness and not
Yes.
health, right?
That's
So no doctor gets paid if you're healthy, because
right.
no one's going to the doctor when they're healthy. They're only going when they're sick. And it's because doctors don't know how to make people healthy.
Right.
They don't know what to do. They don't know how to
It's not part of their
build it.
training.
It's
It's
not
not
part of
their
their training.
DNA. It's not what they were
Yeah.
trained to be.
Yeah. They are only recognizing sickness. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing with hospitals.
Yeah.
And so our insurance system is also built to reward sickness.
Yes.
So if there were some incentive inside of our insurance system, first of all, I think that our insurance system has gotten it is totally out of hand at this point.
Out of control.
If we instead used insurance for what it was supposed to be for, catastrophic situations, right? You fall and break a hip, you have an appendicitis, but we have taken this system and made it to mean, oh, it's going to pay for all my doctor's visits, it's going to pay for all my pharmaceuticals. And so we're using it in a way that we shouldn't be using it. And it's become a crutch, one that supports sickness instead of health. So instead, if we design the system to build health, it would look very different.
Well, no, the good news is that we have some insurance companies that are getting very creative to work with corporate America to reimburse better services that are more holistic in nature, that are more root cause driven. So that's beginning to happen, but not as many as, and definitely not the bigger ones. There's another component that I'm seeing in healthcare that is called cost management. So the cost management is they look at the disease process and they say, how much money do we spend here? But the problem is their solution is to cut services, right? Not look at what services we're giving and saying, is there another service out there that can give us a better outcome, a better result for our patient? No, they're just cutting care. So the way they cost manage right now, let's say if you're spending $1 million on this disease process, they say, okay, we don't want to go up, or we want to spend this year $900,000. Yeah. Well, the way they look at it is, what can we cut to get to $900,000?
We'll take away $100,000 worth of physical therapy, right? And that's how they do it.
Really look at how effective. I mean, we have the most ineffective healthcare system in the world. Mm-hmm. It's inefficient. Is ineffective in every way. And I've lectured in multiple parts of the world talking about the healthcare systems of the world. It's not just the United States, but unfortunately, we are one of the worst. By far. Yeah. Especially as a leading nation, we are definitely the worst by far. We have other countries that are third and fourth world countries that are actually better in their healthcare system than we are. Mm-hmm. We rank, the last I saw was in the 90s. In comparison to other countries. That means that there were over 90 countries that were healthier to live in than in the United States. But we also saw statistics that over 75% of all pharmaceuticals are consumed right here in the United States at a higher premium that you can buy them anywhere else. Mm-hmm. So how is this making any sense? In my opinion, we have a broken system. We need to revamp this system. We need to actually put it away and create a whole new system, in my opinion. But nobody's been willing or able to get that done because of all the lobbying that is happening in not just this country, but all over the world, where pharmaceutical companies, food industries have actually gotten there themselves to such a degree that now they're the ones really making the decisions when it comes to the health of those citizens.
Yeah. And I mean, you can see it in things that we would think are ridiculous. Like, why was the food industry so hell-bent on food dyes, artificial food dyes and colors? Like, why can't they just use the beet juice that they use in Europe? Why is that such a problem here? Why is the vibrant color so important here? Right? And it's because we have no regard for health. We only have a regard for profit.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, we met on a show where we were talking about biohacking. So, this is like the total other end of the spectrum, right? It is the opposite of chronic disease. It's how do I optimize health? What can I do to optimize health? So, talk a little bit about what biohacking means to you.
Well, it's interesting because I saw in the wellness movement, we were addressing a lot of lifestyle changes. And we were trying to teach people to pay more attention to not only how much they exercise, but also, you know, deep breathing. Yoga became very popular during that movement, and other things like that, flexibility in the body, etc. The biohacking, as it emerged, one of the unique factors of it is it was still trying to empower. Everything is about empowering the individual to understand that at the end of the day, your health is your choice, it's your responsibility, period. Do not allow your health to be at the mercy of anyone else, because you're going to be disappointed. They will never take care of your health, because at the end of the day, you cannot trade this body in as much. Look, I have billionaires that are patients of mine that have sacrificed their health, and they will give everything back just to be able to be healthy once again. But now it's too late, and we haven't been able to identify ways to recover because of the abuse that they gave year after year for the sake of making more money.
Yeah.
So the biohacking movement, in my opinion, brought in a very unique environment where they brought in technology. You see, it came at a time in which it took a lot of the wellness concepts, a lot of the holistic concepts, but it made them sexier from the perspective of technology, right? So you have Apple Watches becoming very popular. Now, all of a sudden, you have apps that can actually monitor your glucose levels, monitor your sleep patterns, monitor how many steps you take during the day. You can monitor pretty much anything.
Mm-hmm.
So technology was brought in like that, but it wasn't just like that. It brought in hyperbaric chambers, right? We used to have hyperbaric chambers, but only in hospitals. Now, I just bought one about a year ago, because of all the technologies out there, one of the ones that the science says is one of the most effective ways to lower inflammation, improve longevity, improve performance, is to get in a hyperbaric chamber at least 3 to 4 times a week for an hour. Now we have centers out there that are opening up where you can do cold plunging, hyperbaric chambers, red light beds. All of this technology has actually brought in a new movement where people are now beginning to say, hey, there's a way that I can monitor my health. There's a way that I can include certain technologies that will help me be healthier. And I believe it's taken off quite a bit, because a lot of interest in that space. And at the end of the day, people just want to be empowered, because they feel completely lost at the mercy of these opinions of the providers that they're currently going to. And it's just an opinion. It doesn't make it right. I always tell people, oh, my doctor told me I had this and I had to take this drug for the rest of my life. That's an opinion. That's what they were trained to be. Don't take it personally. Let's see what another opinion may say about this same matter. Let's take a look at it. Oh, they didn't do some functional testing. Let's do some further testing. Oh, we found out that there's other things that are contributing to what you have. Why don't we try to address that and see if that will go away in the first place? You know, so that mentality of going deeper, which is essential for the biohacking movement, that mentality of monitoring, right? So we can look at data, look at numbers every week and compare what we did last week to this week, what we did yesterday to today. And that component of bringing in some of these technologies, whether it's supplemental technologies that are very advanced, to technologies that are wired technologies, like something like BrainTap, right? That has over 2,200 sessions that are designed through vibration and light to actually change your brain So that way your body can have a greater ability to function and heal. I mean, there's so much out there, and that I get excited because I do feel that all these evolutions are empowering people more every day, and that's what we need. We need more empowering on the individual rather than the individual feeling disempowered and at the mercy of the opinions around them.
I'm just curious because I've heard, there are a bunch of very famous biohackers out there, probably Dave Asprey being the most famous of them all. And what is he saying, that he's going to live to 160 or something like that? What do you think human potential is? How long
Based
do you
on the
think?
data that I've seen over the
Yeah.
years, 120 to 125 years old. Like I'm going to be 60
Like
this year,
Moses.
and I already wrote my 100-year birthday speech because I read a book called The Passion Test, and they say that one of the best ways to find your passion is to actually write down your birthday speech when you're 100 years old and visualize who are the people that you want sitting there or standing there listening to this speech, and what is it that you're going to be telling them. So for me, I know definitely I want to be a very healthy 100-year-old. That's, one of my dear friends, Elaine Lalaine, Jack Lalaine's wife. Jack was a dear friend of mine, and I threw his 94th birthday party. Elaine is going to be 100, and we're already planning her birthday. We're already, she turned 99 this summer, and now we're planning their 100th birthday, and she's still doing push-ups. She's still doing sit-ups. Her biggest issue is one knee that is a little degenerative and macular degeneration in her eyes. She's having a little, but other than that, the lady is amazing. In fact, I'll get her for you to maybe do a podcast with her,
Oh my
because
God, I would
I've
love
had
it.
her, and
I would love it.
she'll tell you things you will never imagine. I mean, imagine being they call it the godmother of fitness. And her and Jack, changed everything in the 50s,
They sure
where
did.
they brought in not only fitness, but this idea of lifestyle in people's television, right? That's that they were doing.
Yeah.
And look how many people they would tell you that, I mean, I know that a lot of young people don't realize that Jack LaLanne is who created the jumping jacks. Well, at least jumping jacks we're still doing, right? Even though physical activity is coming back to our schools, it was taken out for a while. And I just read that's one of the things that the schools are actually moving towards, is bringing again physical activity in the schools, because we have gotten away from all of that. But anyways, I do believe that between 100 and 120 is a good estimate of what I believe you can live in a healthy state of mind and body.
Yeah. So now I'll ask you, because we did talk about all the technologies.
Yes.
Is biohacking only for the rich?
Well, that's one of the challenges, because some of the biggest biohacking events, you notice that the ticket prices could be $500, $1,500, even $5,000 to attend at those type of events. And then what I realized is that then you listen to the speakers, and then you go to the expo, and the machines could actually cost thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars, which a lot of people are not going to be able to afford. Now, granted, I find that that doesn't have to be so. I find that there are tremendous biohacking. So to me, biohacking is a way that you figure out how to access something that you didn't even know was capable. And to me, biohacking is just teaching the individuals that the body has a greater capability of living longer and living healthier, right? So when you biohack, you're going from the conventional way of you've been trained and conditioned, right, into a different mode, that because now you're feeling like, no, I want to biohack. I want to get the most that my body can do, right, in order to be able to be the healthiest that I can be today. But more importantly, be healthier as I age, right? Longevity right now is one of the hottest topics in healthcare. Why? Not because we're living longer. In fact, our mortality rate dropped over the last few years to almost 3 years. So we're one of the lowest mortality rates in the country, in the world. But it's because longevity is about making you realize that your potential for living is longer. But what about the quality of your life? What are you doing today to make your quality of life better? So that way you have lifespan and you also have, the health span. What is your health span right now? So to me, I make decisions today in order to help me become healthier than I was yesterday. So whatever decisions I made yesterday, today is a brand new day. I get to make another set of decisions in this 24-hour period from, am I going to sleep 7 hours? Am I going to sleep 5 hours? Or am I going to try to sleep 8 to 10 hours? Right? Am I going to exercise first thing in the morning, or am I going to skip my workout because I have something else that I have to do? Am I going to nurture my stress level and maybe do a meditation or a prayer, or am I going to skip that altogether and go in my day right away? Am I going to connect with the people in my family, or am I going to rush out of the house like I always do, not connecting with my loved ones? These are the decisions that I want people to understand. You get to make them every day. And when you make good ones, it's going to impact everything in your life, not just your health. It's going to impact everything that you feel that day. And that's what life is about.
Yeah, it sure is. You recently wrote a book. I
Yes.
see it behind you, and I have my copy right here. It's called Self-Help.
Yes.
And it's about reversing chronic disease. And I think that you very much believe that health is accessible to everyone, and it doesn't require a big budget, and it is far less expensive to be healthy than it is to be sick. So talk to me about your book. Why did you write this book that says everyone needs to read this book now?
Well, it's interesting because I had another book. This is my 5th book, and I had another book coming out in January. And it took me 3 years to write it. It was a personal development book. My first one. I've been speaking in that space for 25 to 30 years, but I never wrote on personal development. So I wrote a book to try to take all the challenges that people went through in the pandemic and try to help them pivot and get out of that funk, get back to their source of power, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But when Bobby Kennedy was named HHS, I remember that I made a conscious decision at that time that I needed to write a book for the 80% of the people that are not going to understand what chronic disease is. Because we were talking about the 90% cost. We were talking about how it's the number one reason that people go personally bankrupt. We talked about how it is the number one reason why our children will have a shorter lifespan than we do as adults. So I said to myself, okay, what can I bring to the world that will be revolutionary? And initially I was going to call it something differently, but one morning during my prayer, this came up, and it was self-help. And because I have been part of the self-help movement for 45 years, right? For many, many years, I've been in that space personally. And then, of course, I'm a big speaker in that space for the last 25 to 30 years. I said to myself, there's no greater movement than the self-help movement. I want self-help to be more important about self-help. I want people to put health as a number one priority, which over 80 to 90% of Americans do not even put health as a top 3. They usually put family, they put career, they put potentially their faith as one of the priorities. But health, in my study over the last 30 years, not top 3. I want health to be your number one priority. I want self-help to understand that if I'm going to be healthy, it's up to me. My mentor used to say, if it is to be, it's up to me. That was his principle that he taught us many years ago. And so I wanted that principle to be the foundation, that if I'm going to be healthy, it's the self. I'm the only one that can make that decision. I can't depend on what the government may or may not do. I can't depend on what the corporations may or may not take out of the foods. I can't depend whether pharmaceuticals are going to give us real studies or fake studies that show that this pharmaceutical is safe. I can't depend on any of that. I can only depend on the choices that I can make every day to my best ability. And if I don't have the understanding and the knowledge, I seek it out. I'm going to find out what they are. And I can only depend that if I have a provider in my team of providers that is not giving me the answers or the outcomes that I need, I get to choose a different type of provider. Maybe somebody a little bit more holistic, somebody more functional, somebody more open-minded that can look at things differently and maybe give me the answers that I need. So that's the reason that I brought it. And it just released a couple of weeks ago, as you know, and it's been doing amazing. But I just wanted people to be empowered more than anything and to realize that at the end of the day, I want them to realize that their health is based on their choices. So make a better choice today. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah. What are the top areas that you think people should be making these? What are the right choices?
Well, it's interesting because the basic ones that we've always known but become even more scientifically valid every day is movement. Our bodies are designed to move. We are not designed. In medicine, we have what is called a sedentary syndrome, which means that the majority of the people are either spending their time sitting or laying down rather than moving. Mm-hmm. So we need to change.
We are nomadic people, right? Our bodies are designed to move.
We have to move. Mm-hmm. From the beginning of life, we have to move. Yeah. And every day we should move. And now I'm not suggesting you got to have a fancy membership in a gym. I'm suggesting even if it is doing jumping jacks at home, which are free, even doing push-ups at home, which are free, even taking a walk. I know many of us may have pets and we walk our pets, but what about walking you? What about walking for you? Mm-hmm. Because many times when they're walking their pets, they're not even paying attention or enjoying nature or enjoying the sun. They're on their phone, watching the dogs and do their business instead of really being with nature, mentally grounding, right? Mm-hmm. And so exercise, more science today than ever. Now, the best exercise that we have found for people to really understand how simple this can be, and we discovered that in the Olympic athletes, right? Because I worked in that space for 15 years. It's called what's it called? It's called interval fitness. Mm-hmm. So interval fitness means that, let's say that I'm doing jumping jacks. I'm going to do for 1 minute jumping jacks as much as I can. And then I'm going to rest a minute. And I'm going to do it again.
You're talking about high intensity interval training.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The high intensity is really where the magic is. And it doesn't have to be long. In 15 minutes, you can get an incredible workout. Mm-hmm. But if I'm doing weights, I'm going to do weights and I'm going to do repetition, very high intensity, and then I'm going to rest for a minute. If I'm doing running in place or in a treadmill, I'm going to go hard and then slow down and walk for a minute. And then I'm going to go hard. And now gradually from that minute, you want to work yourself up to 2 minutes. But I will start in a minute. And that is the one thing that I can tell you I have seen and helped so many people get their bodies in the shape they want by simply doing interval training. Mm-hmm. You know, high intensity interval training is magical. The second thing is our nutrition. And the problem with our nutrition is that most of us were not even aware of what we were putting in our bodies, right? So we know that the sugar is one of the biggest addictions and we need to cut down the sugar. If there's somebody out there that says to me, "What, Fab, where would I begin?" is reduce the sugar intake as much as possible, if not altogether. Yeah. The second one is the processed foods.
Remember that sugar is more addictive than cocaine.
Yeah. The processed foods, because it's over 60% of the American diet. And what are processed foods? Anything you see in a packaging. It's that simple. Whether it's your meats, whether it's your things that you're cooking with, if it's not real, if it's not whole, do not have it. Just do not consume it. That's why I say when you go to the grocery store, you'll see that less than 5 or 10% of the store is whole foods, mm-hmm. you know, whether it's your fruits, your vegetables, or your meats, etc. Yeah. And then when it comes into the biohacking space, we know that we need to learn to manage stress. And in my studies, that what I've learned is that prayer and meditation are the two best ways, and breathing, heavy breathing, or what we call deep breathing exercises, where you breathe in deep through your nose as long as you can, and you breathe out slowly through your mouth. That exercise by itself can actually alter so many wonderful chemistries in the body that can help you maintain so managing that stress level is important. Then you have the sleep patterns, right? Right now, 1/3 of Americans are not sleeping well. It's become the number one leading cause for Alzheimer's is a lack of sleep. So we need to make sure that we cut down on the tablet or the exposure to any of the television, tablets, phones, anything that you have, at least 30 minutes. I try to do at least 2 hours before I go to bed because your brain needs to balance out again. I always tell people, if you want to sleep a good night, read a good book, because in most cases you want to fall asleep reading and try to read something that is entertaining or, more importantly, inspirational in nature, because then your dreams will become what you are reading about, and it's beautiful. Just like if you watch a horror movie before you go to bed, you're going to have nightmares about that same thing that you watch. Why? Because your brain is going to reactivate it and it's going to call it what you were dreaming. But these are some of the simple
you're gonna
things.
process whatever you went to sleep thinking about is what you're going to process.
And it's what stays in your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is 95% of your habits.
Yeah.
They don't rely on your conscious mind. That's 5% according to the experts. So 95% is everything you've been exposed to since you were born. If you grew up with parents that have difficulty thinking that money was evil and money was bad, you're going to have the same tendencies whether you like it or not, because it's stuck in your brain. It's stuck in your subconscious mind. Yeah. If you grew up with a family...
Which is not to say that you can't reverse that. You can.
You can shift
but it takes work.
Especially today. Like Louise Hay was a perfect example. I got to know her. They published my last book and I got to know her really well. And she would teach me the power of affirmations, and I've seen it. So when you do an affirmation, so let's take a negative belief. I'm not pretty enough. Right? So now you're going to look at yourself and you're going to look in the mirror and you're going to say, I'm beautiful. I'm beautiful. I'm beautiful. Now you're going to close your eyes and you're going to see yourself and the beauty of yourself. And that statement, where you stay in that place for 5 to 15 minutes, it can reprogram and actually alter a new belief system where you now only see the beauty in you instead of the repetitive negative talk, which according to, I think it was Joe Dispenza that told me this. He wrote a book called The Placebo Effect. And in that book, he shared a little bit about how 90% of the thoughts that we have today are the same thoughts we had yesterday. And 80% of those thoughts are negative in nature. You see, we are like a broken record of negativity, constantly beating ourselves up. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. Oh, I can't have that. I can't have that. I can't have that. Oh, I can never be that. I can never be that. I can never be that. So you have to work really hard to break that pattern. And that's where things like meditation, visualization, prayer, all of those things allow your mind to go into a different space. And like Napoleon Hill taught us many years ago with a book called Think and Grow Rich, which is a wonderful book if you haven't read it.
I loved that book.
He used to say that when a new thought enters your mind expands and it will never go back to the same that it was before. The question is, what are the thoughts that you're putting in your mind? Are you putting the same old thoughts of always, or are you working on new thoughts that will maybe allow you to have a new outcome and a new behavior?
Amazing. Well, I agree with you. I do think that everyone needs to read this book now, Self-Health. I love the fact that you pointed out that we all need to prioritize our health, and not just like somewhere in the top 10 of your life. Your health and being healthy leads to everything else working. Leads to your relationships working, leads to your job working, leads to your finances working, leads to everything working. And so making your health a priority will make everything else that you value better.
I would agree.
So, Dr. Fab, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people get the book?
Well, they can just go to my website, drfabmancini.com, drfabmancini.com. And from there, actually, it leads you to everything. You have, like I created a chronic disease risk score where it's a very personalized, where you put in the information and automatically gives you what are the best behaviors that you can do right now to improve the numbers that you were low on. So that is there, plus over $1,000 worth of free resources that I wanted people to take advantage of. But if you go to the website, you can follow me, you can see where I am, all the events that I do, etc. Because I'm on the road every week, sharing this message with as many people as I can.
Yeah.
But thank you
Yep.
for having me. It really
You
means a
are
lot
a
to me.
prolific speaker without question. So if you want to hear more, just go to Dr. Fab's website, drfabmancini.com, right?
Yes.
And you can see his schedule. You can get this book. He's written several others. So make sure that you check them out there. And I loved being with you today. I know that this is our first of many, many conversations, which we will surely record in the future. And I loved being with all of you today. And if you loved being with me and you loved this conversation, make sure that you like it, share it, send me a comment or a question, and know that I will be back next week, same time, same place. It's Dr. Jenn. Bye for now.